Isaac, yet another one where we're about to hit record and then we're like, do we have the new version of What Is Up, Partner Up? And we realized, no, we don't. We don't have that version. What the heck's going on?
I don't know. Like, you would think that we would be able to think of an intro for our own podcast before we change the name. You'd think we would have maybe had that lined up, but we just dove into it. And now we keep trying and nothing really sticks. So I don't know.
We got to crowdsource it from the audience. So accepting DMs from our longtime listeners on what should be the new intro open for the Now Nearbound podcast. And excited for this conversation today. The logo's in the news a bunch recently. We won't discuss that here today, and that's not why we're here. But we kind of have a longtime listener, and a topic that we've been dying to get into a little bit more is kind of like a little bit of the origin story of, let's say, the channel in the IT world and what they're seeing from kind of like the other side of, let's say, the SaaS table is right now today. I wanted to welcome on Alexandra from Cisco. Alexandra, how are you doing?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I've been following your journey for a while now and really excited to be here today.
We're honored to have you, and even more honored that you've been listening, because over at Cisco, you've been there for around 9 years, roughly. Is that about right?
That's right. That's right.
And what you lead at Cisco, I'd love to unpack that just for a minute, Alexander, because people might not understand the scale of kind of like Cisco and where it's at. If for the folks that are listening from, let's say, the SaaS native world, and they obviously have heard the phrases channel, et cetera, but these mean some very material, big things at, Cisco. So maybe unpack kind of the partner managed as a service a little bit, and kind of the business unit that you're helping lead as the vice president there.
Sure. So I lead something called Partner Managed and as a Service. It's our first route to market team. You think the company that sort of invented the IT channel would have had a route to market team before that. But we were created because we're seeing the market move away from just traditional IT resale to really figuring out how we deliver outcomes and experiences. And to give just a scale of the size of the business, so Partner Managed is around a $9 billion business annually for Cisco. So that's basically how much we sell through partners as a managed service. And the other thing that we do is we're seeing that a lot of these managed services, and there's tremendous, stats in the industry around the growth towards managed services for various reasons. But we're also seeing the managed services are sort of colliding with this term that everybody throws around, which is as a service. Because what happens to what is as a service versus managed service? Managed services is when a customer says to a partner, manage a part of my IT stack on my behalf. But then the customer might want it as a consumption model. So they want everything as a subscription, right? They don't want to own any of the equipment, be it hardware, software. And they want an experience. They want to experience it as a service. So we're seeing these two worlds colliding, and that's why we formed this team about 3 years ago.
So I have maybe a funny question for you. I've spent my career in pretty much all small early stage companies, like 0 to 100 or fewer employees. And I'm very familiar with that world. Jared and I started Partner Hacker, which is now Nearbound.com, like a year and a half ago. And we're talking to, the whole partner ecosystem world, but a lot of the people that we're talking to are more in the Series A, B, C, certainly not the mega giants like Cisco. So I'm curious, when you said you've been following and you've been a fan, what are you hearing in the kind of conversations that we've been having at, Nearbound.com, and like, what are you hearing in there that you can identify with? Cause I'm thinking somebody at your scale, I feel like you're in like a totally different orbit. Like what is there that is in these conversations that is relevant to the conversations you're having? Where do you see those connection points?
Such a cool question, Isaac. I think it's because the industry is sort of at a turning point. For years, the way we go to market is it's sort of been defined whether you're selling point product SaaS. And don't forget that Cisco is an agglomeration of lots of companies. So we have companies that are small inside Cisco, right? We acquired Duo, which is, a SaaS company that sells primarily in SMB. And so I think that we're all trying to figure out, in a world of platforms, outcomes, and experiences, and how people throw these words around, what is the optimal sales model and what is the role of partnerships in the ecosystem in how we all go to market. And another reason is, and go and Google it, Google go to market. There aren't a lot of books on go to market. And actually I find it fascinating, like this whole concept of go to market, even as a word and I've been doing a lot of research because I've been thinking about writing a book about this. In academia, it's usually under marketing as a discipline, which takes a completely different, it goes a completely different way. In the VC world, they like to call it distribution. And then we folks depending on where you sit, some of us call it channels, some of it, call it partnership. Somebody calls it ecosystem. And that's why I started listening to you guys, because there's very few people talking about it and trying to figure out what that next model should look like.
That's so interesting. I always love being reminded, because it's easy to look at companies like Cisco and just assume, well, they've got everything figured out, right? Like they know what they're doing. Obviously, they're big, so they've got it all dialed in. And like, to be reminded, this is always evolving. Everyone's trying to figure it out all the time. Like, how do you change? How do you adapt? Like, if you're an early stage company, you're trying to figure out your own go to market, but so is Cisco, right? So are all of us and your network of partners as well. So like, I just think that's such a fun reminder. It's easy to kind of look up at the mountain and be like, that's success. And then you just sit there and you're good to go. But like, no, it's constant. It's constant learning.
Yeah, we have to figure it out. Also, the other cool thing about being at Cisco and why I'm here, I actually call us the true unicorn. Everybody was so focused on the billion-dollar SaaS companies, but we don't look like anybody else. So it's really hard to figure out what on earth is going on at Cisco, because first of all, we have a long heritage, right? I think it's going to be our 40th anniversary next year. Very few companies survive to this scale, for so long in the tech industry. Secondly, we just have such a range of technologies and architectures and things that we deliver to our customers. Thirdly, we just have a huge customer base, and it goes all the way from your Fortune 500 to SMBs out there. And then fourth and last but not least is, I love to say that, that we invented the channel 27 years ago when we started, IT distribution with the distributors and everything. And when I was at BlackBerry at that time, I used to look up at Cisco, not only because our NOC was all built on Cisco technology. And I always used to say, who was the salesperson that sold all of these things? That when I die and come back, I want to be that salesperson, because they sold a lot. And so, yeah, so I think about us being that unique company. And it's really, really exciting to be here, because you're still figuring it out, like you said.
I might be the only person in the world who misses BlackBerry. I love those things.
I don't know. I don't know. There's lots of people that I talk to that, it's always dinner conversation.
The actual buttons.
So the routes to market and like partner managed as a service, kind of like the thesis for what's changing. I think, Isaac, that was a great way of framing this, because it's kind of crazy how we're speaking about two sides of the same coin when we're approaching it on like what's changing in go to market or B2B SaaS from, let's say, the venture-backed companies that can take a lot of mind share in social media, right? Versus the companies that historically had built ecosystems around channels, even if they weren't identified as ecosystems, right? This is kind of like all three of us talking about this shift from a different perspective. So like Jay McBain talking about the trifurcation of the channel and the era of ecosystems, right? To what we are calling kind of like the Nearbound era, and how partnerships should not just be a department, but a strategy for every department, to what, Alexandra, what you'd kind of described as like the age of the partner. And, I think what's kind of changed is that we've had to have this refocusing on, and I think you articulate it really well. So I'll kind of kick this back over to you, is like in the age of the partner, you mentioned outcomes and experiences. That might sound like corporate speak to someone that's not paying attention, but the smarter people that I talk to, that word outcome stands out to me. It's the outcome for who? Is that Cisco's outcome? Is that your partner's outcome? Or are you talking about your customer's outcome?
Hmm. Yeah, let's start what's changed and why we're talking about these things, right? I think there's been a tectonic shift in how technology is consumed and delivered, be it in small or large businesses. And there's a couple of forces that have been pushing this. It's been, first of all, the advent of the cloud and cloud architectures, right? Everybody expects some sort of a dashboard, and you go and you click. Um, the other thing is, of course, application centricity, right? Everybody is consuming technology through some kind of app. So going back to that experience. Um, the other big force, I call it the five forces, is flexible consumption model. So people don't want to own assets. Think about, from your bigger company to your smaller company, like these, it's very hard to make CapEx business cases for, things that change every three years. And then last but not least, you've had the folks that are actually buying technology know nothing about technology, nor do they care. They want something that either makes money or saves money. And so that's how that's why we talk about, outcomes and experiences, because what we're seeing is, as we map out these buyer personas and who's actually making the decisions, is that they expect you just to, okay, deliver Wi-Fi. I had one pizza shop. Now I have 10 pizza shops. Just make it work, and make it work that they can all communicate, and that we can send a signal to whoever is buying the ingredients, and it all works. They don't care what's under the hood. And they just want that seamless experience, and they want it, and they want to pay for it. And this is where the as a service piece comes in, either by seat or by what they consume. They don't want to overpay. There's been lots of nightmares of people like buying all of this technology, and then 3 years later, it wasn't adopted, wasn't used. I mean, be it even SaaS, right? So that's why we talk about the age of the partner, because what we're finding is that when you actually map out what an outcome is, there is not one vendor alone that delivers an outcome. It's usually a combination of, multiple vendors with partners, bring in your ecosystem app that actually then pull together what looks like an outcome to the customer. And just before I finish, because I get so irritated about like outcome, what does this mean? For me, an outcome is really how you deliver something of value to a customer that actually helps them make money or save money. And we've distilled it to 3 tenets that really describe whether you as a customer are getting an outcome. First of all, there is some sort of a performance KPI. So in the traditional sense, it's like availability. So it's always on and it always works. The second one is some sort of experience that you're getting, right? You can go to a dashboard and you can click and something appears in your house or in your apartment or whatever. And then the third one is it has that business impact. So it really affects you as a business. It either improves your workflow, so it creates more automation, or it helps you detect if something is, if there's a cyber attack, or, your data is being compromised. So those are the things that, to really pass the outcome test, it has to have those 3 tenets.
So what do you think got, let's say, lost in translation then, so to speak, between, let's say, Cisco's kind of participation and formation is perhaps, kind of creating the IT channel world, and then let's say, like a PTC, right? Kind of like the original Boston based SaaS company that, what's kind of got lost in translation between then and now? It seems like none of these businesses or any of the jobs that we have today existed without those things that you're discussing. So why is that refocus on here so important right now, given kind of where we're at?
Yeah, because in the last, I guess 10, 20 years, we've been living in an economy of zero interest rates, right? And so everybody or
Oh, you came out and said it. You just came
yeah,
right out and said it. I
exactly.
love it.
Let, let's look at what's been happening, right? And so because people didn't really have where to invest, these SaaS companies were able to grow. And a lot of them, if you look at the SaaS model, the traditional SaaS model of PTC, it's a beautiful sales model, right? It focuses on the customer value. It sells value to the customer. It always asks why buy anything? Why buy now? And why buy company X's product? It then focuses on KPIs and delivering it. But it was a very mercenary based model, right? You had to, when you recruited these sales folks that, fill your LinkedIn inboxes with cute videos and asking you for a meeting because they think that you need to buy what they have to sell. It was a beautiful model, and it scaled the industry. But I think now, as people go back and they look at, okay, I have great product market that fit, but how am I going to get that hockey stick curve? People are starting to realize this new word, distribution. How do I get to effective distribution while keeping my cost of goods sold, my COGS low, right? And not blowing up my sales expenses. So companies are having to reevaluate their go-to-market. And I think this is why, alongside with these tectonic shifts in technology that are pushing us to defining outcomes and experiences, there's also this very harsh reality of the economy that we live today, which, lo and behold, companies actually have to make money at some point in time. And so distribution and figuring out what your ecosystem looks like that's actually going to multiply the value of what you're building starts becoming really, really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a quick thought on the zero interest rate thing. One of the major things that changes is time preference. And so it's not necessarily that the model that a lot of these SaaS companies have itself can't work. It's more that how long you get before you make it work changes. So like, okay, we'll just go out and hunt individual customers one by one, and then we'll just keep scaling up our sales, our outbound, all that stuff to get them. When you have zero interest rates, you have a lot longer period of time and a lot more money to play with to do that. So you can be like, yeah, the customer acquisition cost, none of that stuff makes sense yet, but it will down the road, I promise. And when the market shifts, you got to get that answer a lot quicker. So you have to start thinking bigger, scalable distribution from day one instead of like kicking the can down the road. We'll just go out there and do this, go out there and just do the standard stuff and pick people off one at a time as long as we can. And then later we'll figure out some big partnerships. It's like, no, you're going to think about those now. The time preference shift is a big one.
Indeed. Yeah. It's been interesting. I mean, to watch what's happening right now. And I see so much interest in, okay, what are the partnerships that I need to grow, and who can I partner with, and what do actually partnerships, what does that word mean? What is it, a rev share? Is it really just I've created a platform where my services and my products are there, but I've also created it with certain APIs that somebody can come in and build on top of it. So it starts getting really, really interesting. How you come up with a distribution strategy. And I've been talking to a lot of SaaS companies that literally sometimes call me up and ask me for advice, friends that are at SaaS companies, like, how do I go about this? How do I choose the right partners? What is the right partner? So it's very cool what's happening in the industry right now. And you guys are right in the middle of it, really defining what does that sales model need to look like.
I think to tie these things together, this is kind of the test. Can we break this down in a way where Isaac can understand it? And if the answer is yes, we've done something pretty impressive here, Alexandra, on this podcast. Is what I've heard from you is, and let's say the partner manages as a service business, there are numbers that a lot of startup folks wouldn't be able to comprehend, and folks and hundreds of people across thousands of partners that these things kind of touch. But this shift in tide and the focus on the customer outcome I've heard your mission and kind of remit be like, it's not just about the route to market. It's not just about the channel or it's also about, let's say, the playbook for building it. So what do I mean? If you're talking about the customer outcome through partner managed as a service, is that you're not just going to your partners and being like, where are my deals? That's how most partner programs feel. So like when I'm unpacking this sentiment, for a misalignment between a VP of partnerships and a CRO. It's that VP of partnerships feels like their CRO treats their partners as, where's my deals, where's my deals, and where's my deals. And
Yeah.
then when it comes to how you're thinking about innovating, you're approaching your partners as, here's how we can help create more value through our offering of being a Cisco partner, is helping you deliver outcomes to customers that you otherwise can't. It's not just the capability or availability of product SKUs or names, right? It's the end result of why that partner gets paid in the first place. The partner gets paid because they're tied to customer outcomes. And to be very clear, I've always thought this was a problem with SaaS versus agencies, just for example. SaaS versus service providers, consultants, MSPs, is that those people in that bucket, they're beholden. How they get paid is the customer outcome.
Absolutely.
In SaaS, you're paid, vendors are paid for access, right? It's access versus outcome. And what you're doing is you're kind of blending those things together and saying, hey, yes, Cisco sells products where they have access and availability to these features, but here's how I'm creating and we're creating with our partners the actual outcome, right? Managed as a service, to where the partner feels like they have more value by being a Cisco partner, which strengthens both of your go-to-markets. Did I summarize that okay?
You said it beautifully. And I think that the big thing that's changed is exactly because who is in control of that technology decision is the partner. It's not just the vendor and the customer relationship. The partner, when it's a managed service, and a lot of the times, even in as a service, the customer turns to the partner and says, figure it out for me because this is too complex. I don't even care about what's under the hood. So you choose the technology, and that's what's fundamentally changed. And to your point, Jared, what that has sort of forced us to do is really evaluate our operating model, what are the roles we hire for? What do they do? And how do they help the partner in that journey, all the way from how we build our offers to then how our technology gets consumed and delivered and optimized and renewed and all of that, adopted and all of that good stuff. It's really forced us to rethink our sales model. And we've created roles that we didn't have really before, that we never really made official. And really grown our team. I mean, we started out as 20 people really focusing on this, and we're up to 500 today.
It's so interesting. So Jared, I think you did a good job because I think I understood it. And that's the test, the explain it to someone who's 5. I have the mind of a 5-year-old. So I'm the litmus test. But it made me think of both of you talking an analogy here. So my son is working at a gym right now. And so I love just kind of thinking about all these different industries. And you think about the typical gym model, it's like a SaaS model, right? It's like $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever it is. You come in, you put it on monthly, but it's going to auto renew annually. And they're banking on, frankly, most people not really knowing how to use the gym and not using it, right? And then there's a small percentage of people that maybe are high maintenance customers, but for the most part, it's a bunch of people that sign up for something because they're thinking, I need to get in shape. I need to be healthy. And if you just focus on trying to compete with the other gyms, buy my monthly membership, our gym has the best equipment, our gym is the cleanest, our gym, you're really going to suffer. There's 2 ways in which you can wrap those people in an ecosystem. One is after the sale. Hey, we have actual fitness coaches. We have people that can help you meet your goals, tailor things to you. The gym is then becomes more of a tool, right? And the person that you're working with, that trainer, that's really where the value is coming from. And that's where the outcome is coming from. So that's post-sale, but even pre-sale, think about CrossFit. CrossFit didn't become a big thing. CrossFit gyms didn't win because they went up in every city and said, we have a cheaper monthly thing. It was because people who were searching for among friends, word of mouth, mostly social media. I have a goal. I want to get in shape, or I want to feel a certain way. And they would see people saying, CrossFit. Oh, here's somebody who's telling me how to do the CrossFit routine. And then the last step would be, great. Now I need to find a gym, right? I found a person that I trust who told me how to solve my problem. Now the tool is the last step in that process. And compare that to the old school, powerhouse gym or whatever, which are still around and they're still doing the same thing. They're still handing out flyers in parking lots, literally saying, sign up to our gym. And it's people don't discover gyms that way. And if they do, they don't get value and they quit soon. So like this idea of realizing pre-sale, it's about the people that are already helping your buyer that they already trust. And then, post-sale, and the sale comes if that's the best tool to help them. And then post-sale, continuing to have that outcomes-based focus. So anyway, that was the analogy where my brain.
When extending your thought there, and they've all those good gym companies, take Equinox or any of them, they've also extended to the ecosystem. So be it on a pre-sales or a post-sales, right? On a pre-sales, you've got your influencers on Instagram or whatever that, they sort of, when you're taking that decision, you go and you research, you go on Instagram and you see, oh, these great looking people. Okay, I'm going to be part of that ecosystem. And then post-sale, they also have to look at how they monetize their brand. And so they sell the t-shirts or they have collabs and
Yep.
Equinox X, whatever, right? So it's really important to start thinking differently that way. And I call this platform thinking because it's beyond building a product or a service. It's how do you create that platform where you can derive multiple variations of value? And I always like Bill Gates' definition of a platform. He says a platform is when the economic value of everybody that uses it exceeds the value of the company that creates it. That's a platform. And so it really helps you think, if you have this platform mindset, you're going to create this certain experience that has all these services and all these goods, but it also has the potential of multiplying the value when people come and collaborate with you or build with you. I think that's what's really exciting. And that's what's happening across all industries,
Yes.
even music.
Yep. And that platform, these are not always the same thing, as we know, Jared, from our conversation with James Courier. But when you get both a platform and network effects, so that not only does everybody on the platform get more value than the owner of the platform, but everybody on the platform gets more value every time someone else joins the platform. And then you get to tap into Metcalfe's law, and like now you're talking about some pretty amazing. Yeah, that's interesting. And you can see that to a degree with things like CrossFit. It's like, hey, the more that everybody else thinks it's cool, the more that I get to benefit from being a part of it. But then there's also a point of diminishing returns with some of those as well. Right? We're like, well, if everybody's doing it, I lose if some of the benefit is like social status for doing something that's like elite or something like that. Anyway, we could get crazy with the analogies, but I really like that though, understanding this, that it surrounds the buyer at every step. And it's always about what do they want and those outcomes, not just like serving them the one slice, but understanding that slice exists in this broader world.
And I thought CrossFit was actually a pretty solid analogy, Isaac, in terms of like, you could actually call CrossFit a platform, so to speak, right? Like the gyms and the owners behind that very much kind of fit this, managed as a service, so to speak, right? Like you open up a CrossFit gym, you're signing up because you're like, wow, I could open a gym this old way, or I could deliver a better product to my, watering holes, my community, and use the CrossFit model because I'm going to generate more results for my end clients, right? Like you look at a CrossFit gym and you could probably take the same data and you could talk to this about this, Alexander, from your side, is that if you were to take a cohort of CrossFit gyms and the median, let's say, health improvements or performance or baseline health of a CrossFit gym versus kind of an old world gym, you're just going to see a very different clientele and base, right? Like CrossFit gym, like you're pretty hardcore, like you're going in, like you're going to get the results that you want. That's like an elite version. And I think, whenever you're trying to differentiate and building a route to market, an ecosystem in your channels, are you helping your distribution points deliver a better product? Yes or no?
This is
Right.
happening. The funny thing is, as you're talking, and I'm not the CrossFit expert, but I think this goes across all industries, right?
Exactly. I think from Cisco's
As-
point, this applies to both.
Yeah, in industry, in music. I love music because I was at a music startup for a while, a cloud music service. We built the first app ever that MTV did, which was really interesting, delivering music to your pocket. And so I've been following very intently what's happening in the music industry. And And you see, like in the old time, very, very akin to resale, you as an artist would make money by selling CDs or selling records in the old times, right? That was very much that was very much like resale of IT. You put out a new product and you distribute it, and the more shops you could get it to, the more you could sell it, and you do some marketing, right, around your brand. That business has been completely disrupted because artists no longer make money from selling music, as we know, following all the way from Napster to Spotify today, although they've started making some money on Spotify, the big ones. They make money from creating a platform of their brand. So their brand is like a platform where they create this brand, they reinvent themselves, they play different roles, and then they bring together an ecosystem of fans. And that's why, and of course they sell now. Live music is the way to make money. And that ecosystem of fans, they identify themselves because everybody likes to be part of a community, and they come together, right? And that's why you have, Beyonce and the Bayhive, and you have Taylor Swift and the Swifties, and they've really figured out how to monetize their talent through very much a platform approach. And then thirdly, when they think about, how am I going to deliver value to my community, they just don't. It's about the experience that they, not only in the live events, but everything that surrounds them, be it the merchandise, be it movies. I mean, anything in the creative field, they then have to think about how they diversify what they put on top of that platform.
So great tie-in. I absolutely love looking at what's happening in the music industry. And it also ties into the article you published on nearbound.com. I'd love to have you just get a little bit more into that, how to become the Beyonce of your ecosystem. You touched a little bit on that, but like, first of all, what does it mean to become the Beyonce of your ecosystem? Why that analogy? And then what does that look like? I'd love for you to just touch on a little bit some of the stuff in this article, because I love it.
Yeah, well, I think, we were at Vegas for our SKO, our sales kickoff, and I had never been in Vegas on a Saturday, I'm going to confess. And suddenly I saw these folks all dressed in silver, and I was like, what on earth is happening here? And they were all going to the Beyonce concert, and she had told them that she wanted everybody in silver so that they would create a disco ball. So I was like, it's kind of what I was saying, right? To become the Beyonce of your ecosystem is really, how do you build that experience, that brand, and that ecosystem of people, which is her Bayhive, that come together and follow her creative journey. Every time she reinvents what role she's going to play. And we're seeing this in the partner world right now. I love to say partner archetypes are dead, because, when I first started at Cisco, everybody was like, okay, what is a service provider versus what is a VAR versus what is a DVAR? And what I'm finding is that when you actually unpack it, a lot of companies have capabilities that cross over. And really the difference most of the time is their business model. So you can no longer pinpoint and say an SP just does this or a VAR just does that. It's really about what is the experience or the services that you're going to deliver to your community, depending on what you're actually building. What is it? And so I think that's what we see with Beyonce as she goes through her different phases of creativity. She delivers different things and different experiences.
Yeah, this is so interesting because there is a parallel in don't hold me to this too much. I'm learning out loud here, but it's kind of like this 3-phase process where phase one, and where software and music have this kind of parallel. Phase one is this distribution model, right? You create something and 100% of it is done through like you're getting it to somebody else who's then selling it to somebody else. You're relying on that third party distributor. Then you have some kind of technological breakthrough and you can go direct to your consumers. And so in music, you could go directly and create like, hey, all these independent artists, you can spin up your SoundCloud, your Spotify. I knew there's a band, they've been around for forever. They're called Humphreys McGee. They're like a big, huge band. And they literally, it's a SaaS model. They have monthly subscribers and they hold concerts only for their monthly subscribers. And it's like they've been doing this for years. And it's like, hey, things like that weren't possible before. So now those are possible. But then the third phase, there's too much noise. There's too much of that. And the price keeps getting driven down. And so you have to level up somehow. And like to your point, be able to reinvent yourself and have multiple ways that you can monetize on the value that is, the trust that you have, the joy that you bring, the music that you deliver, the feeling that you give people, whatever that is. And you've got to be able to kind of like partner, right? What do you see musicians doing now? There was a cheeseburger named after like a rapper that my kids listened to like not that long ago, right? Like realizing you've got to get more creative. So it's not just relying solely on the record companies to distribute, or phase two, relying solely on direct to consumer, somebody paying for my music. Now it's something much more complicated in this vast ecosystem of like multiple ways to reach and surround your customer and to create and to capture value. I love the analogy.
Yeah. And I think that the cool thing is going to be, we've seen as we move to more of a platform-based world or platform economics, right? We've seen in the music industry, there's SoundCloud, there's Spotify, there's a couple, right? We've seen in the mobile industry, there's iPhone, Android. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in the IT industry at a domain level, right? I mean, if I had a magic ball, I'd say that there's going to be more and more M&A activity as companies, as partners have to start coming together, especially as, if you think about the partners that have been really focusing just on resale, they're looking at, okay, how do I actually expand my toolkit to actually deliver more outcomes and experiences? What are the capabilities that I need to acquire? So you'll see consolidation there, and you'll also see probably consolidation in what are the IT platforms that deliver the needs of our customers.
And this is what's so fascinating about this conversation is that, Isaac, you kind of framed this from the beginning of like, hey, what about your world and our world are we talking about that's similar? I mean, we could talk about things that are happening right here in market in some of the revenue intelligence wars, and not to throw anyone under the bus, but just name some names: Gong, Clary. If you look at Zoom Info, SalesLoft, Outreach. So these would be, technologies and tools, SaaS native, that all have probably John McMahon from PTC to thank to some degree for the CRO title, right? Kind of going back to that lineage, right? They all came from that. And what's happening across all of those quote unquote hypergrowth SaaS companies? Mass consolidation. They're shipping each other's features. They're acquiring each other's competitors. There is absolutely a thread of consolidation happening at the B2B SaaS hypergrowth level. And I've certainly seen that at the service provider and agency level, in many different aspects. So like, for example, I could point to scenarios where I'm seeing accounting firms that have built up books of business around Xero or Intuit acquiring each other and merging. HubSpot agencies and marketing agencies, IT, this shift is happening all around us if we talk together. It's not just this, oh, is this a blip in our industry? Well, if it's happening or looks like it may be happening around Cisco's channel, around HubSpot's agencies, around hypergrowth SaaS, I think we're talking about a really big shift in how businesses work with other businesses here. And I think this is just such a fascinating conversation to have for us to go, whoa, we may be more important to the future of B2B than we all think in this partner remit position.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jared. The process of innovation is often described as the process of bundling and unbundling, and this kind of cycle. Things get bundled, things get unbundled, and suddenly the individual parts are worth more than the whole. So you take it apart, and then later the opposite's true. You bring it together, and I think we're kind of in a rebundling phase. But that can mean two things. A rebundling doesn't just mean bigger companies acquire smaller companies, and now you have a smaller number of larger firms. Bundling can also mean for ecosystems where like, hey, there's a bundle, but it consists of a bunch of separate companies. So some of them will be acquisitions and consolidations, but some of them will just be connection points between companies where it's like these two things used to operate in silo. Now they're operating together in a single ecosystem, and it's tightly bundled from the customer standpoint. the experience is more unified and it's a tighter bundle. But what's behind the scenes may actually be a lot of individual entities that aren't all absorbed into one. So I think you see both of those, like,
Yeah.
consolidations, but also just a increase of partnerships.
I love what you're saying, this bundling and unbundling. We call it, I don't know if it's going to be the name, but we call it the outcome chain. And what we mean by that is exactly what you said. Like when we think about, because you have to focus on the customer, it's all about the customer. What is that use case, right? It can be something as simple as Wi-Fi across my 10 pizza shops and, secure Wi-Fi across my 10 pizza shops because they have nefarious people walking into the pizza shop and using their Wi-Fi. And so we started mapping, okay, we've got a beautiful reference architecture in Meraki that does that for every single institution out there in retail. But we started mapping, okay, but what else do we add on top of that to make it intelligent Wi-Fi? And during the pandemic, we added cameras, right, to the stack, but then we needed an app. So we go to an ecosystem player and you start we needed cameras to check whether people had masks coming into the shop. Like that was a use case. Sounds crazy, but and then we needed an app that actually could tell if a person had a mask or not. And so you start stitching these things together so that you actually deliver what the customer needs. And to your point, some of it, does it mean actual consolidation of companies buying companies? No, some of it is exactly what you guys are working on. How do you get all these pieces to work together? And most importantly, how do you not have to do it every single time differently? Because that's what kills your ability to scale, right? If you have to build these product offers, customize them every single time, you're never going to scale. So another thing that's also happening around this bundling and unbundling is, how are you creating products that are modular, or as Gartner calls them, composable? And so they all like stitch together really well. And you don't have to invent the offer every single time, particularly important in SMB and for startup SaaS companies.
I think the entire framing of this conversation has just been so fascinating for me and us. And Alexandra, I want to thank you so much for kind of pinging us, for writing the article, for sharing kind of like these different perspectives. It's made it abundantly clear to me that channel professionals and partner professionals should not be speaking in separate watering holes. Right? Like there needs to be some unification of the channel nation kind of world and, what we're trying to do with Nearbound. These conversations are absolutely valuable to be held together. And definitely have to do the plug for the, Beyonce article. Everyone's going to have to check that one out. So we'll leave that in the show notes. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And I look forward to us collaborating much more in the future.
I would love that, Jared and Isaac. I think what you guys are doing is so important. You're really creating the moments that we need, the conversations that we need in the industry as we figure out what it means to create an ecosystem and what do we do differently as we meet in those watering holes, as Jay says, and especially because we have no clue how AI and the new technologies that are being developed are going to disrupt us even further. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm really looking forward to attending Nearbound and continuing to learn more.
Look at that.
Amazing.
The guest did the plug for us. The Nearbound Summit, nearboundsummit.com. Go register. You could join us and Alexandra, and it's going to be an amazing time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Isaac, I got, so we release what day? The Nearbound podcast. We release the Nearbound podcast when? Every single Tuesday, right?
Tuesday. Yep.
All right. What about this? It's Tuesday at last. Welcome to the Nearbound podcast.
Oh, okay. I like it.
How about that?
I like it.
That's not bad.
It works.
How about that? So Alexandra inspired me. I'm like, I gotta come up with something on the fly while she's here. So just the energy inspired me. I like that. That might be our new open for the next one. So we'll see you at the Nearbound Summit, nearboundsummit.com. Thank you so much, Alexandra, everybody, for listening. Nearbound podcast. We will see you all next week.